Hi everybody, it's Miss Sherry with Make It. So we are doing a fun activity. I love this activity. I've actually been doing this one for a little over a year, but I've never done it for Make It before. And it is super simple, but it took me a long time to get this to prepare it for everybody. So it's a really easy activity and you can do it so many different ways. And I have some examples. What you're gonna get a little baggie with 64 squares. So they are 1-inch squares, and I have colored them in half black, and each side is colored. Hopefully you'll get one side of each of your square that looks pretty good. So you're probably thinking, okay, that's kind of weird and really silly. But what you're gonna do is you're gonna make a bunch, you can put them together into different patterns. And I have some examples here. So this is called a houndstooth pattern. All of these are the same squares that I just showed you. This is a houndstooth. This is a cool one that my daughter designed. This is one that I did kind of like quilt blocks. You can see there's 4 different blocks that are all together, kind of like a quilt. I've got straight lines. I've got chevron pattern here. And when you turn it around, it looks completely different, right? Isn't that awesome? I have a bullseye. I love these two together because they are the exact same, but they are the exact opposite. They are like a checkerboard, but one way the squares on the outside are black and the other way the squares on the outside are white. This one, all of the squares are going the same direction. Okay, and this one, the squares are going into an X. Isn't that pretty awesome what you can do with all the squares? I promise you all of the squares are the same. So I'm just gonna put the squares together really quick. I will do this one. And then I'm going to talk about what a practical thing that you can do. So when you get your squares, you can do these in, like I said, there's hundreds of different ways that you can do this. I want you guys to experiment on a bunch of different things that you can do. If you want to glue them down, you can to make your own piece of art. If you want to color the other sides, go ahead. If you want to make your own squares and make your own colors, that would be awesome as well. These are 1-inch squares and I just colored it half on the diagonal. Or if you want to make your own squares and leave them whatever color you cut them out in, you can do that. You can do maybe black squares and blue squares if blue is your favorite color. And I'm going to show you, when I'm done doing this, I'm going to show you a couple cool things that you can do. So we're just going to make this black and white one. And I'm not going to do the whole thing because you guys can get the idea really quick. So I've done it in several different ways. You can go row by row to do this, which is how I'm doing this first one here. You can go row by row. Or another way that I've done it is, and then you would just follow it. So I've got where I'm making like the pattern here, and I'm just going to follow it, and I'm going to make sure that all of my dark squares or my dark triangles go together. And when you put those dark triangles together, you're going to get a dark square. See how that works? And sometimes you might mess up. Like, what happens if I do that? Well, when I look at it, I say, oh, I just messed up there because this doesn't look the way I wanted it to be. So I'm just going to pick it up and turn it. See that? But like I said, you can make hundreds of different patterns. Maybe you could try writing a letter. Like maybe you could see if you could, my first name starts with an S. Maybe you could see if you could make an S using not all of the squares, but maybe just some of the squares, or the first letter of your name. And remember, this is an activity for all ages. It's not just for the younger kids. I obviously have had a lot of fun doing this activity, and it makes your brain think in a different way. So some of you might be thinking, and I will talk about this a little bit while I'm making this pattern really quick. What does this have to do with real life? Well, I want you to think, what if you were remodeling your house or you're building your house and you were able to get a bunch of tile for a bathroom, and it was a really, 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 really good price, and it was a pattern like this where it was the square tiles that were half black and half white. And you think, oh, that's such a good price, but how am I going to arrange it in my bathroom to where it looks cool? And then you think, oh yeah, I remember. And then you arrange it to where you've got so many different ways you could arrange it in your bathroom. And that's one way you could think about it. Or what's something else you could do with a pattern like this, or squares. I bet some of you have grandmothers or moms or aunts or somebody like that that likes to make quilts. Does anybody have anybody like that in their life? Well, when I'm done making this, I'm going to show you a couple quilts. I'm going to show you one that my grandma made me when I was about, I think I was about 10, and I had it on my bed for years and years and years. Part of it is squares, and part of it is triangles, and part of it, she cut out the shape of a little girl and appliqued it, which is a craft term. She appliqued it onto the main part of the quilt. So that kind of gets you thinking of different things what you could do with this. And once you get down the basics of stuff like this, what you can do with different shapes is endless. So if you were to do squares and rectangles with stuff like this, did you know that's what quilters do? They take different shapes, they take squares, they take rectangles, they take triangles. Sometimes they even take circles or pieces of circles, and that's how they make the beautiful, beautiful quilts that they make. So I'm going to show you, like I said, the quilt that my grandmother made for me when I was around a lot of your guys' ages. And then I'm going to show you a quilt that I made for my son before he was even born. Now, a lot of you, some of you heard me talk about my son. His name is Travis. I made one for my daughter, Maggie, but I couldn't find it to bring it today. But I did make her one too. And the ones that I made for my kids, they were all made with different colors of squares. Now, the one that I made for Travis, after I made all the squares and sewed it together, then I cut some of the squares off, so then the edges were triangles. But when I sewed it, it was all squares, all different colors of squares. And with Maggie's, it was the same thing. It was all squares, but hers were in different shapes into flowers, okay? So I want you guys to think about different things that you can make with different patterns. And there you go. That is this one recreated right there. See, wasn't that lots of fun? So now you have ideas, and let me show you the quilts that I was talking about. So this first one here, and as you guys remember, because I talk about it a lot, blue is my favorite color. So my grandma made me this beautiful, beautiful blue Sunbonnet Sioux quilt. Like I said, there's squares. They're turned on their side like these are. And then she appliqued and embroidered the blue Sunbonnet Sioux on here. And this is, I'm not going to tell you how old it is, but it is more than 30 years old. But this is a great reminder. This is an example of one thing you can do. Let me grab this other quilt here. This is one that I made, like I said, for my son Travis. So I made this for about 18 years ago. So this one's also very well loved. The same thing, it's made out of squares. But look at that, I made it out of a bunch of different colors of squares, and they are turned on their side. And then at the end, there are squares here, but I cut them off. And then, so the very ends here are triangles. But this is an example of what you can do with squares. Now the other thing, I do like making quilts. I have started a quilt, I'm not finished with it yet, but here are a couple of the quilt blocks. So you can tell I've got a bunch of squares here, and I've got some rectangles. So this is an example of what you can do with squares and rectangles, and you put it together, and that makes another type of a pattern. And that's what quilters do. And that's a lot of times what people do when they're tiling their floor. So there's 2 examples of what you can do using squares. You can do quilts and you can tile your floor. Okay, so I want you guys to do this activity, have fun with it. I love doing this activity. It's actually really, really relaxing. You guys have a great day, and I will see you next time for Make It. Talk to you later. Bye.